You are watching Comfort Food Dudes, and I'm Shawn. In this video today, I'll be making my version of a beef enchilada, and I'll show you exactly how to do that right after this. So the beef enchilada, or any enchilada for that matter, it consists of a few different parts. You're gonna have a meat sauce of some sort or a filling that you want to put into it, and you're gonna have a red sauce or an enchilada sauce that'll top it. Of course, you have the tortillas. I'll be using whole wheat in today's example, and then there's also filling it and throwing it in the oven and cooking it. So the next part we're just going to get on to, we got to make the meat mixture, and we're going to make the enchilada sauce at the same time. So I'll see you at the stove. Okay, so we'll start with the meat sauce here, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to put my heat, well, we want it to start boiling, so I'm going to be pretty high heat here, maybe an 8 on mine. So I do have pre-browned ground beef. If you don't, you'll just need to brown it first and then drain it, okay? But I already have mine browned. So I'm just going to dump it in, all in. And then I have a large onion, and I'm going to just put that in with it. Okay, I have 2 cups of water. So I started with 2 pounds of ground beef, a large onion. It's a little more than 1 large onion diced largely, and 2 cups of water. Normally, if you're just one person or just cooking for 2 people, you wouldn't need a big batch, so you'd have this recipe. But I need a big batch today. Okay, and then I have about a cup of just tomato sauce. Just gonna pour that right in there with it. Okay, and then I have, so it's a fair amount of chili powder. It's the mild version. You don't want to do this with the hot, but this will be a 1/4 cup of, yeah, because I'm doubling this, this will be a 1/2 cup of chili powder, and it's 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. And I'm just going to go ahead and just mix that in right now. And the only other thing I do add is I just add some red Thai chili peppers. Now, if you can do like cayenne pepper, if you have cayenne, you can just do that instead if you don't want to do this. But I like to boil a couple of these down, and it's hard to see, but I scored them down the length of the pepper itself, and I'm just going to drop them in with it, and I'm going to let them boil. And I have 2 for the enchilada sauce. So once we just mix this all together, okay, so I have that stirred together. So the chilies are in there with it, and I'm just gonna let this come to a boil. And as soon as it does, I'm gonna reduce my heat probably to about medium, and I want this to be kind of a low boil or a heavy simmer for about 15 minutes. And I'm not gonna put a lid on mine. Just use your discretion. Don't boil it right dry, but you want to use up as much water as you can. You just want to reduce it down. And then at the end, I'm just gonna pluck the 2 chilies out, and it'll just be a hot meat sauce. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the enchilada sauce. I'm going to switch my pan up. I think I underestimated the size of pan I'll be using. So So we're just going to use a bigger pan just to make sure we got enough space. Okay, and for the enchilada sauce, we're going to need to just, I'm going to start with a roux. So I'm just going to get my pot getting hot here. And then we're going to go in with, I'm going to do 4 tablespoons of, this is olive oil. And I'm going to do 4 tablespoons of flour. And that'll get the base sauce going. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just want to get this hot. You don't want to smoke it. Doesn't take too long. Okay, I'm going to reduce my heat down to about a 4.5 on here. I'm just going to set my timer for 15 minutes. Okay, now this is getting hot here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the 4 tablespoons of flour right in. Okay, start mixing that around. I just want to cook this down for just 30 seconds or so. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my chili powder and my garlic powder. And in this one here, it's a half cup of chili powder, mild, and it's 4 teaspoons of garlic powder. And then I'm going to be adding 4 cups of chicken stock and 2 cups of tomato sauce. So this, it's a lot of chili powder, but the flavor ends up working pretty good. Okay, just going to go in with all of it. It's going to get a little difficult to deal with here because it's not as much liquid, but we'll just try to mix it as best as we can. It's kind of a dry mixture now, as you can see. Okay, then I'm just going to come in with chicken stock now. Alright, so that's breaking up nicely now. Okay, so I just also have my 2 cups of tomato sauce here. I'm just going to dump that in. Stir that around. And at this point, I'm going to drop in 2 red chili, Thai chilies. And you could also just instead, you could just put in some cayenne pepper, a teaspoon, start with that and taste it. But I'm going to drop these in and I'm going to let this simmer for, well, pretty close to between 10 and 15 minutes as well. And I haven't added any salt as of yet. And when you're putting your chicken broth in, try to find a low sodium version. Go ahead and heat your sauce up to the right temperature and the right consistency that you like. You might have to add some cornstarch if it's too runny or didn't work the same way for you. And then you can add your salt at the very end when you taste it, because the chili powder itself seems to be pretty salty, as it is just a mix. So this is almost coming to a boil here, so we'll just let this come to a boil, then I'll reduce the heat. And I will let this just simmer away here. Okay, so I'm just going to bring my heat down to a medium low, which is a 3.5 on here. And I'm just going to let it simmer. Okay, so the enchilada sauce here, I'd say that's pretty good. I pulled the 2 chilies out of it and I tasted it, and it's got some good heat to it, so I'm going to go ahead with that. As for consistency, so it's pretty thick, kind of thick like a gravy. Okay. You can see that good? Okay. So I'll turn off my heat on that. Just going to move it. I'm going to just going to set my oven to 400 to preheat. And as far as my meat mixture, because I'm using a taller pan, my time to boil down and reduce actually ended up being an extra 5 minutes. If you used a wider saucepan that was thinner, it'd have more surface and it would evaporate the moisture faster. But at 20 minutes of boiling down, and I've removed my 2 chilies as well. But we're down to about that consistency now. Okay, so there will be the slight bit of liquid at the bottom if you let it stand for a bit, but otherwise it turned out pretty nice there. So that will work perfect for what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to move back to the other counter here and we'll start assembling. Okay, so I've introduced a couple more characters to this story. Okay, I just have some black beans with some corn, just canned corn. I just mix them together, and I'm going to put the tortilla down. I'm going to put some meat mixture onto it, and then I'm going to sprinkle some of this on top of each one. And then after it's folded, then I will set them in there. I'm going to try and get 6 lined up. These are 9x13 baking dishes. I got 2 of them that I pre-greased. Okay, and then we'll just get working at it here. I'm going to do 1. I'll show you how I do it, and then I'll just repeat the 12 there quickly, and then we'll get back to you. Just give your meat mixture a nice stir. That way it's all nice and liquidy and incorporated. Okay. Just a nice amount. We got to do 12 of them, so we need the mixture to stretch through all of them. Sometimes I'll actually use a refried bean that I'll just do a smear of first, and then the meat mixture, and then this bean and corn. But this will work just fine the way I'm doing it today. Okay, just add that. Okay, and then I just fold them over, just roll them up. Just roll it loosely, I don't roll it too tight. And then when I put it in the pan, one thing I do like to do also is just put a little bit of a smear of the sauce in the bottom here. And I'll do that to both pans. Okay, just stick one in and slide it forward, and then we're going to do the next, and we'll keep carrying on. And I'm already making a nice mess. Okay, so I have my 12 laid out here, if you can see them. And so what I generally do, is I just go ahead and I just pour some of this right across the top of both. And just try and get it to cover them best I can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, just get some down the sides there. If there's any edges that aren't covered, they're going to end up quite crispy, and that's not necessarily a problem. Just saying. Okay, and I'm going to reserve some sauce that I have left over. I don't need all of that. Just in case anybody wants some with just to drizzle onto theirs after it's on their plate. So I'll set that aside. Okay, and then next I'll just come along and I'll just sprinkle some cheese, whatever cheese you have, just something to melt on top. Whatever you feel comfortable with, just spread some cheese on it. Should be okay there. Try and get it nice and even. Everybody gets a bite of cheese. Okay. And then I just have some green onion here, just chopped up. Just sprinkle some of that on. You could probably use something else here if you wanted a different herb or something, but I don't use herbs a lot. Never have really, and it's not that I guess I can't really cook with them. I just choose not to. I have a lot of dry powder and herbs and stuff that I use, and that works well for me. So use what you prefer in your kitchen. Okay, so I'm gonna cover these with tin foil. Just get it on there. Okay, so I preheated my oven to 400. You could do 375 or 400. Really, we're just going to heat it up. And I'm going to put it in there for about 30 minutes. And then after that 30 minutes, I'm just going to pull these off and I'm going to switch it over to broiler just to brown the cheese. Okay, so you'll see this again when it's cooked. Okay, so the enchiladas are out. So I baked them at 400 with tin foil covering them for 30 minutes. And then I took the tin foil off and I put these back under the broiler. And it only took about 3 minutes or so, 4 minutes. I watched them closely to make sure they didn't burn and get away from me there. Okay, so they're nice and golden and everything looks pretty decent here. Generally what I do is, because I just use the full tortillas, and I just come along and I'm just going to put a slice down the middle. And then this way people can have a smaller portion if they don't want a whole one, or they can have both halves, depending on what they prefer for the day. Okay. I'll just cut both since I'm here. Only takes a second. All right. Just going to move one of these off to the side for the moment. Okay, so as for a dish. Getting the first one out's usually the fun part of all of it, because they're all so comfy in there, none of them want to come out. Okay, I'm going to pull 2 pieces out. Okay. Okay, so once I pulled out the 2 pieces here, I would just come along and just, you can just put some sour cream wherever you'd like to put sour cream on it. There, I'll just put some off to the side here. Okay, and then I just sprinkle a little bit of onion on there. And it might be a little on the spicy side, so I'll just throw a few tomatoes off to the side here, and a couple pieces of cucumber that help cool the tongue a little bit if they are a little bit too hot for somebody. My plating skills aren't amazing, but the important part is that I know how to get this into my belly. Okay, so basically that's about how I would do that meal, and then I would just serve that out, and I made plenty so people can come back for as much as they want. So okay, so that concludes this video today on me making beef enchiladas. Couple of the pitfalls that I had throughout making this was just, again, I used too tall of a pot, and I did it on purpose, but I just needed to adjust my time for boiling down the meat mixture to reduce the water down. You can use a bigger saucepan, spread it out a little more, it'll evaporate faster. Then 15 minutes is okay for that amount on a high simmer. And the only other thing that I recommend caution is when you're spreading the meat mixture out, if you have this many to go, 12 tortillas, you just want to make sure that you spread the meat mixture as evenly as possible. That way everybody gets a little bit of meat in there, of course. But aside from that, you can play with the flavors a bit. You can add things into the filling, or you can take some stuff out if you don't like that much. And same with the heat. If you don't like it very hot, you don't have to add the chilies in first of all. And the chili powder that I used, it's a mild, and it's kind of more of a sweet heat than a hot. Just make sure that it's not the hot chili powder, because that stuff is pretty potent. It's kind of like cayenne pepper, the cayenne powder that you put on, so just be careful with that. But other than that, I'm going to be getting ready to dish this out for dinner here pretty soon, and so you guys have yourselves an excellent day. And if you are enjoying these videos, please consider subscribing to our channel, as that helps us greatly as we work to grow this channel and bring you more great recipes. So anyway, you take care. Bye.